Right, good evening everyone. Thanks for coming along. A little bit of a last minute panic with travel and everything, but kind of got here and got everything programmed in working, so hopefully it's going to run. Got bits of Dynamo, live coding, Revit, live surveys and stuff as well, so hopefully I'll remember to pick everything up. We'll see as we go through. So, title for tonight's presentations, check your Revit model and try again. Something I'm seeing is coming up more and more at the moment is people looking at how they actually check a Revit model. We're all used to kind of checking drawings, now putting all this information in, the whole purpose of BIM, the whole kind of government ethos of all this data in one place, shared, which is great, but how do you actually check it all? So I'm guessing that's why you're here. See that. So, brief introduction, just a bit about me. Director of Innovating Futures, who are a consultancy company helping with all aspects of BIM on the software side, but also a lot of the process works around BIM. Various bits and pieces there. Revit certified professional for architecture, structure and MEP. Do a lot of Autodesk development work with the Autodesk Developer Network, and also work with several groups like Rob, such as the Dynamo user group across the UK. And I'll skip over that. Just some bits about what we do to help our clients. So the interesting bit and why we're actually here to look at Revit and checking Revit drawings. So you're probably all used to these kind of things. I didn't want to press that button. There we go. The checked logo here, pretty used to in your offices, working on projects, check logo, sign it, date it, record stuff coming in, going out, making sure it's approved, make sure there's no errors on it, etc. And it usually involves a long process, usually paper-based. Be quite surprised and interested to hear if anyone's doing a process that's not entirely paper-based, and usually involves kind of someone creating some drawings, documents, printing them, passing them to someone else, someone checks them, passes to someone else, might go back in the loop. You end up with a whole kind of workflow of going through various gates to get things signed off, and approved, and stamps and checks so you can validate what you've done. I'm going to keep moving now. And it's all basically to check that the information we're actually sending out, whether is it correct or incorrect, any silly errors on it, everything's filled in so that we get the right information across to the end client. And basically the end point of that, to try and avoid some of these issues, kind of getting those ones where things don't fit, you're getting calls up on site where they're saying, well, this doesn't fit here, or you've got a door on this drawing that's 800 wide and your schedule says it's a metre wide. Obviously a lot of those we're solving by using software such as Revit, but there's still a lot that come in through kind of manual notes, etc., which we're trying to reduce, say through intelligent software and modelling, but they still will exist, hence the reason to need to check it. And also because of this guy, I'm sure you've all dealt with various people in projects, and due to lack of information or incorrect information, you get people who try to make claims and profit from that. I won't specify any particular disciplines themselves, not knowing who's entirely in the room. But obviously, yeah, it does happen. So it's really important we have to check stuff. The problem we've got then, as I'm sure you'll be aware, is traditionally we've always checked stuff. So we've had this paper, we've churned out drawing after drawing, you spend a day on drawing, get it checked, get it sent out, carry it on. Historically, then we've had things like this, really nice kind of floor plan, plot plan, maybe even a little elevation on there, all looks great, spent a while drawing it, someone checks it, what's on that paper is what's going to go out. So it's kind of nice and simple, you look at it, if it's correct, it goes out, if it's not, it's not. Obviously, as we now move on with things a lot more complex, we're looking at 3D models, maybe more complex geometry that you can't show exactly on a 2D drawing. You might have to use a combination of images, sections, 3D views. How do we actually check what's in that, and especially in a model where there's lots of data included behind it? So the problem we're seeing at the moment from a lot of people is the use of this kind of stamp for information only. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that when you get models in or work with others. You issue out with drawings, people say, yeah, contractually, PDF drawings, that's the way forwards, that's what we're going to do, that's what we're going to deliver, but oh yeah, we're going to work with BIM, so we better issue a model. Then stick for information only on, which kind of defeats the whole point of this, because you're getting something which for information only, but if you actually rely on it and use it as part of your design, they'll say, oh no, we didn't mean that. If you looked at the drawings, that was actually correct, which defeats the point. And disclaimers about what you can do, what you can't do. Fair enough, they probably have their point, and there's a lot of legal people who are looking at how do you actually back this up. I think the biggest problem we have from a legal perspective and company departments wanting to use these labels are the fact it can't be checked. So hopefully if we can solve the issue that we can actually check what we're sending out, the same as we could with drawings, hopefully we can remove some of these disclaimers and logos. Because at the end of the day, see, BIM's all about collaboration, so we don't want to kind of stop that. Without the collaboration aspect, kind of BIM just becomes pretty 3D modelling for me. So this is an interesting one, kind of based on that, and as Rob said, talk about the CIC Protocol. Anyone read through this document? A few people. It's a fun read, isn't it? That's not too bad. I think compared to a lot of the British standards and PAS documents, it's not too bad. But there's an interesting point I just want mentioning here, which is in section 2 of the document. So this protocol is designed for people who haven't read it to be attached to the back of contracts, to be used as that kind of legal appendix for BIM projects. And part of this, say in section 2, states that 2.2, in the event of any conflict or inconsistency between a model prepared and delivered in accordance with this protocol and any document or information extracted from such model, except where the information requirements state otherwise, the model shall prevail. So basically saying, if you send out a drawing and a model, and the model and the drawing are different, then the model takes precedence. So it defeats all of those warning labels you put on the model, because if you've signed up to this and this is in your contract, well, that's legally binding. You've said that the model is actually precedence over the drawings. So interesting one. I know a lot of people have signed up to use this in a lot of contracts, and they try and get around it and then kind of get bitten by it later down the line. So if you are using that, worth checking. So if we look then at the workflow of actually checking these drawings, so you like to say paper version, quite easy, print something, hand it to someone, they take it, move it on, nice easy. Digital ways checking models, I think we need a different workflow. So our models and drawings are the same thing. If we look at just a kind of stab in the air theory project here, but you get a project, you've got 100 drawings, you've got a pile of 100 drawings, that's all you print off, nice easy. There's nothing more, nothing less, obviously some reports and stuff around that we're focusing just on the modelling here. So you have one model, and that can equal 100 drawings. That's same thing, same project, easy. However, 100 drawings might also equal 500 different views to create a difference. 500 views might include 35,000 elements. 35,000 elements might then mean 700,000 element properties. So all this data and great information we're putting in is fantastic until you come to check it. Now, rather than checking 100 items, you've got to check nearly 800,000 items, which is obviously going to take significantly longer time. So what are our options moving forwards? We can either keep calm and carry on, we can do what we've done before, check the drawings, assume that if the drawings are from the model, that must mean the model's correct, but there's a lot of risk associated with that. And a lot of risk, obviously, with the for your information only kind of stamps we place on it, that whilst everyone's doing it at the moment, we're getting around it. As more and more people start checking, validating their information, it'll become harder to keep that up. You've got to do what you've got to do. You can just say, well, we've got to check it, we've got to go into the model, we've got to go scan through, we've got to read those 700 items, we've got to produce schedules, we've got to check it all. And it's going to take us weeks to do. Some people just throw kind of manpower at it. I don't think that's the right solution, but something people are doing at the moment. And quite a nice little cartoon feature here I found, that this, for me, almost the way of checking drawings to check a model. You're doing the same old technique because it's the way you know, it's the way you're happy with. And everyone says, oh, we'll just keep doing it because we've got a project to deliver. We've got to get this done. We don't have time to change and look at what we're doing. But So as you can see there, the guy going into battle with his sword and his army rather than talking to the guy who's just invented the new machine gun. So we're looking at ideas and new workflows. So for me, again, this is starting to get a few of my ideas now. I think it's really about the workflow of how we do this. You've got to kind of almost take away that thought of we're going to produce something that's printed and check it, and look at how we can actually use computers, the power of Revit, the power of some of these other tools to see what's in there and validate some of this information. So to check or not to check, let's just skip back. Does people actually know what we mean when we say to check something? So obviously it's titled about checking your Revit model. Do you know the difference? If I said to you, can you check this model, what would someone do? Would you go into the full details of it? Would you look at the engineering? Would you look at the design of it? So I think there's a lot around what we actually mean when we say we're checking something. So just a few kind of quotes here to see we're all on the same track with this. So this is just a simple definition I've looked up with the word check. So to check something, to examine in order to determine its accuracy, quality or condition, or to check the presence of something. I think people agree with that. So what that actually means to me, how can we look at that in terms of something you're all familiar with, and it's these fun little boxes you get on websites. So it asks for your email address. If you don't put your email address in, you press enter, it pops up and it's checked it and it said, please tell us your email address. So it's checked whether you've actually given it an email address. Is it there or not, basically? Nice and simple. Then we move on, we also talk about if something valid, do we validate it? And it's to check or prove the validity or accuracy of it from the stage. So for me, this is kind of the next stage on for a check. The checking we're checking is something there. Then to validate it, we're checking, is it actually correct? Is it something we're expecting to be there? And again, using the email address analogy, you've put something in this box. So I've put Mike Turpin, Innovating Futures. It's done a check on this. It says you put something in the box, therefore I've checked something is there. But then when I validate, it says email addresses need to contain the @ symbol. So it knows at some basic level, just me writing in a load of words is not a valid answer. And then finally we look at verify or verification, and this is definition to make sure or demonstrate that something is true, accurate and justified. So this is real now, taking it into that final level. Again, on the email thing, you fill it in, you type it in, you make sure you've got the right address, you've got an @ logo, you've got a .com or a .co.uk. They then send you this and say, well, you've signed up to our mailing list, we've now sent you an email, you've got to go to your inbox and actually click on a link so that we can verify that that is actually your email. You haven't put in your friend's email, you haven't made one up. And that's that real high level. So once you verified it, you know it's 100% correct. And obviously you can see if you're trying to apply this to a Revit or model check, that checking something's there is one thing, and that takes a certain amount of effort to validate that it's along the lines of what you're expecting. There's no amount of effort, but actually to verify that it's 100% accurate and complete is a whole nother ballpark. So I think we've got to look at it in terms of this is what can we actually do when we check something. So we all want to go out and say, yes, this model is 100% verified and perfect and there's no issues with it. But when we're looking at validating this, especially over the next year or two, as we move forwards, we'll check not just what we want to do, but actually what's achievable. I'm sure none of your officers want to have you sat there for months on end checking one issue of a drawing. So now I'm going to try and do something live quick here. So hopefully the internet's going to play ball with us. And what I'm going to do, that is working hopefully. So this is a live survey, and obviously as you're all technology people, you love new ways of working. I'm assuming you're all on smartphones, so hopefully a bit of interaction now. There's this survey page, so if you've got a phone, you've got an internet connection, if you grab it out. So this is kind of my section to learn something from you as the audience, as your interaction, to then pass the ideas back to you, give you some ideas at the end. So there's a link here, so if you open up a browser on your phone and just go to live.voxvote.com, so if I zoom in on that. down there, live.voxvote.com. It should ask you for a PIN number. If you put that in, you should be able to follow along with this survey. It's not going to be one of these massive 40 question things. I think it's 4 or 5 questions around some of the modelling things. It should send you the results at the end as well if you're interested in it. Is that coming up for people? Cool. So what you should see, there we go, perfect. There. So basically, well, do you currently check your own models? Which again, so as Rob said, I've done this presentation once before. He asked me to come along here after presenting it at the Manchester group a couple of months ago. I was quite interested to see, obviously at the moment, there's a good percentage there, kind of 60-40 people who are actually checking it, which is great to see. In all honesty, I expected it to be a little bit less in terms of people actually checking models. Now, I specifically haven't specified what kind of check, so could be a visual check, could be a real in-depth data check. That's good. So we'll skip to the next question now. So basically I'm looking now at how should we check things. So regardless of what you're doing at the moment, how would you think you should check a model? So mainly from drawings, views and exports. So checking the drawings means that the model is correct. Manually within Revit, so having someone actually in the software going through the model, creating sections, views, etc. Manually in other software, using Revit tools such as schedules and filters. Automatically within Revit using some kind of plugin software. Revit using Dynamos software, or kind of outside Revit in some kind of third-party application. I think you should be able to vote on several of those if I update. Okay. So this is in terms of, it doesn't necessarily have to be at the moment, so if you think something like outside Revit in a third-party software would be the best way to do it, even though you're not doing that at the moment, you can vote for that one. So, but interesting at the moment, people think it's still manually. Seems to be the highest response on that one. Okay. Within Revit itself, rather than other software, quite low there. Okay. Quite a good percentage for Dynamo there as well, which is interesting to see. So I'll show some thoughts on that one later. Right, next question. So this one, interesting, is what do we think we need to check? So are we checking, if we're saying we're checking a model and you send it out and say this is checked, you're checking the geometry, data, the design or engineering aspect of it, or the actual model quality. And the model quality, I'm talking in terms of things like, have they used 5,000 reference planes everywhere? Have they duplicated items? Have they kind of that kind of model process? How have they named it? Families, etc. Okay, so we'll give you a few seconds just to vote on that one as we see things coming in. Okay, so interesting. So data's taken the lead, which is good to see. So yes, from that aspect, people are seeing it almost as, and with the design engineering being kind of low in comparison, seeing that's kind of something that's easily checked on the drawings going out, but obviously the data is something that we can't check regularly. Okay, perfect. All right, I think 1 or 2 more then. So if we were to do this, and argument's sake, it's kind of perfect scenario, someone's creating something brand new and you can have the output in any format you want. Would you want to see the results in terms of a signed paper or report, so someone saying yes, this is correct? Spreadsheet in Excel kind of containing all the data so you can manipulate it. A dashboard, a pass or fail stamp, so yes, this has passed the audit, or no, it hasn't. Or some kind of other way of displaying the results. So a dashboard might be that it will show you little dials for how complete everything is. Okay, let's see what comes through. Quite popular on the dashboards. So, okay. Anyone who voted other? Care to share what other methods they're thinking of? Is that what you?
Yeah, I think BCF is a good way to bring the results back around as well, so we can put it back.
Okay. So using the BCF file format, so again, are recorded, but in a kind of standardised way.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other ideas for other? No. 17% though. Okay, so good. So dashboard seems quite popular on that front as well. Okay, so last question then, question 5. Would you want to see kind of one standard check or many bespoke checks? So do you want just, this is our audit, and almost a kind of push the button and this is the audit, regardless of what project you're on, what size you're on? Would you want a few, so maybe a small scale project one, or schools and hospitals one, just checking different items, or kind of lots of bespoke ones, almost kind of an audit per project? Again, kind of perfect world here. So, okay, so a few different ones seem to be quite popular. Some kind of a few different projects. If you work on different ones, maybe half your office does one type of job, half does the other. Okay, perfect. Right, I'll finish that. So if I close this, actually close that down, and I think it might give you the option to get the results on there. Otherwise, I'll publish the results back to Rob, and they'll come out with all the videos and stuff as well, so we'll be able to see all of those. So hopefully that's my kind of interactive part of the presentation and getting some ideas for you. So now I'll throw out some of my ideas. Kind of checking models, something I've been doing for quite a while now, probably about a year, 18 months on and off looking at this. So some of the results I've kind of come up with. And some of these I'll talk through, kind of manual ways of doing things, using some inbuilt Revit tools, Excel, third-party apps, other software, Dynamo, and bespoke development. I'll show you a few examples of some of those as well, some of the more interesting ones. So obviously we can do a manual check. We said about we can go and start looking through all these projects. We can sit there for hours on end. However, I'm sure no one in the room wants to sit on Revit all day long just checking that someone's filled in the right parameters on every single item. It's mind-numbingly boring. So we can move on, we can take things a step forward, we can use various Revit tools. I'm not going to show you a live demo of this because I hope people are kind of up to speed on these. We've got things like Revit filters, Revit schedules, so checking here whether a fire rating door begins, I think those doors begin with NEF, simple little checks. Revit filters, you can do things like check my steel beams are no longer than 12 metres because that's the maximum beam I can fit onto a lorry. Things along those lines. So you can do it visually or check the data behind it. Excel, another great option. You can export Excel from the schedules directly out of Revit. Various plugin tools as well allow you to get into Excel. And again, in Excel, obviously we can do things like, say, the height of the doors here, 2.660, highlight a cell red if it beats a certain value. Some real simple validation you can do just without having to check all those drawings, especially for the data side. Obviously geometry a little bit more difficult within Excel and Revit. Then there's third-party apps. Anyone using the Autodesk model checker tool? One or two, okay. It's worth checking out. It's on, I think it's called BIMinteroperabilitytools.com. What's that one? Yeah. BIMinteroperabilitytools.com. You can download it. It's a free tool. It's kind of made by Autodesk, but they don't seem to want to brand it too much under themselves for some reason. Yeah, good little tool. Does some basic checks. It'll go through the model, produce a nice little report. Looks great to start with. However, unfortunately, there's a lot of restrictions to it, and it's not perfect in what it does, but useful. Also, Ideate Explorer, that a few of you have used, is quite good at being able to get in and interrogate some of the data behind the model, getting stuff in and out to Excel, things like that. So, great apps, and using the Revit App Store, there's loads of stuff out there, so there's plenty of other bits of software that do this. However, none that I've seen so far are really focused on the actual model audit as a kind of real tool. Then there's other software, obviously the likes of Navisworks, great tool for checking things, again, primarily the geometry side of it. Also Celebri as well, if anyone's used that, really good at kind of checking the model, checking some of the things of how they fit together, so distances between stuff, edges, etc. So now I'll go on to a few demos of bits and pieces. Many Dynamo users in the room? Just a few. So mostly, rest of you heard of Dynamo? Any understand it? Kind of, have you seen it? Probably think Dynamo's like all about this stuff, all the kind of weird, funky things that all those kind of Fosters and Zahas and the likes do. I'll hopefully show you that it's not all about that if you've not come across it before. So I'm going to switch over to Revit and a nice little live demo now, and hopefully a project a few of you are familiar with. It's a great little Revit house project here. So again, example, any project, large or small, what you'll notice is if you're using Revit, I think it was 2016, Dynamo now comes packaged as part of Revit. In 2018 it's under the Manage tab, and you've got Dynamo and Dynamo Player. So if I fire up this Dynamo tool, so it's just an add-in tool, sits on top of Revit, lets you run little scripts, but you can write them in a visual way, so you don't have to be a full computer coder to understand how this works. So I say, I've got this model here, so I'm loading Dynamo, always sits on top. This is where it's really useful if you've got a second screen, you can split them apart. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this script here, so let's go back to that page. Here's the kind of landing page. You can do a new script, open an existing one. So I've got an existing one I've written here, and I can open that, and that will show me. So I've got my kind of canvas area here with all these what we call nodes on there. And all this is going to do is if I fire up, I've got this Excel file here called views. If I fire that up, at the moment it's an empty Excel file, nothing in it. So this script is really simple. There's what kind of 8-9 nodes there. It's going to basically end up at this node here, which is writing something to that Excel file. So what that node needs is it needs a file path where it can find the Excel file, what sheet I'm going to publish to, and where it's going to start. So it's going to go to that views.xlsx. I'm going to publish to sheet 2, and I'm going to start on row A1. Quite simple. Then it needs to know, right, what data do I want to write there. So what I'm going to do is get all of the views within that document. I'm going to get the detail level of all the views. I'm going to get the scale of all of those views, and I'm going to join them all together so I can put them all into a list. And then basically just write that data in. So there's the script. I say once I've written it, I can load it up, and all I've got to do, just down at the bottom here, there's run. So I can run this on the project. Hit run, a few seconds later, there we go. So it's taken, what, 1 second, 1.5 seconds. And this has now published all of the views in my models with the scale of each view and what the detail level is. Might be useful to you, might not. But something I come across quite a lot when people say their model's really slow, it takes forever to print. We usually find they're doing kind of 100 to 200 drawings and everything's set on fine detail, which really slows stuff down without giving any benefit. So this is quite easy. Then obviously being in Excel, you can do all kinds of formulas to say, well, if it's 1 to 100, it probably should be on fine, should be on medium. You can start to highlight these. So again, to do real little checks like that, quite useful to check 1 or 2 parts of the model. Again, all those are in there, so nice and quick. Once I've written that script, I can use it then on any project I want, just a case of firing it up. So if I open up another one now, let's go for that one, and name reference. So this little script here, again, real nice simple one here. You don't have to be an expert at Dynamo to be able to do this. But this one's just going to get all the reference planes in my model and check whether they've got a name or not. Some projects I've worked on, if you've got quite an in-depth kind of BIM execution plan, they've said how you should and shouldn't do things when you issue them. This one checks basically, have you got reference planes all over the place that aren't actually doing anything. So again, if I quickly run through it, it basically says what category do I want? I want the reference plane category. I want to select all elements of that category within my model. I then want to get the name of each reference plane. I then want to use this one, which is an equals, so it's a comparison, so it says if this equals this. I say if my reference plane name equals reference plane, and that's just a kind of little quirk of Dynamo, that if it's got no name, it will automatically put in a name called reference plane rather than leave it blank. Compare the two, then create a list. So if I press run, there you go, and again, fraction of a second, and it's worked that out, and I've got 56 reference planes in this model that don't have a name in them. So I can quickly run through that, and I can check if I've got a project with 56 and it's a massive project, I might go, actually that's not really an issue, that's actually quite good. If I've got a project and it's got 5,000 unnamed reference planes, then I probably need to go and have a word with someone and get them to fix it. If I go back to this one, so all elements of category, so 66 reference planes there in total. So again, I can then start to look at, well, I've got this many in total, this many unnamed, things to check. So again, might be useful to you, might not, but just an example of how you can use Dynamo to start to automate some of these checks. Okay, so minimise that down.
Does it come bundled with a whole selection of some useful scripts that
There's
over the time have found useful for checking that are publicly available, so we don't have to continuously make our own scripts? I could see somebody in the office can spend so much time making these scripts.
you can spend a lot of time, yeah. It's so
you can check them otherwise, these scripts. So does it come pre-bundled with all the useful scripts already done, or does it come completely blank?
not saying anything about Autodesk and what they give away. They've written this great program. Dynamo's free of charge. It's an open source program, but they don't give away any kind of scripts or anything with it. It's up to you to build. Having said that, there's a Dynamo forum and a Dynamo website called dynamobim.org, I think, or .com. Loads of stuff on that. If you go on the forum and type anything in, especially things like that, if you want to check reference planes in a project, if you go on the forum, there'll be someone who's done it and they post screenshots of doing it, or a lot of them will actually post what they call a DYN file. So if I go to that folder there, where is it? Unnamed reference plane. It's a DYN file. It's 4 kilobytes. They're tiny little files, and you can share that around. So people post these online, so you can get hold of them quite easy. Otherwise, a lot of them are quite simple to build. There's all your nodes down here, so it's just a case of expanding it and dropping them in. So that's the part of the coding. It's almost coding, but using it like Lego, and just drop pieces in as you need them. But yeah, check the Dynamo website and Dynamo forum. There's loads of stuff on there that's useful. So that's Dynamo, so a great way of starting. Unfortunately, it doesn't really give us a kind of check. So Dynamo is not going to give us that, I want to check this model and it runs everything on it, because it's going to take too much time. It's going to be too complex a script, not really what it's designed for. So this is when we can go to the next level, which is Revit has an API, I don't know if you're aware of, which is basically a back-end kind of coding entrance into Revit. So anything you can do in Revit, you can also automate via this API. So this takes it the next step forward from Dynamo and actually coding this in, so you can create your own ribbons and buttons and tools that automate some things. And this gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of what we can do, so we can actually link to events within Revit, say if this happens then do this, and check a lot more information. And it works a lot faster. So an example of what some of this, oh, I shouldn't have stood on that. There we go. Walk around this way. So some of the code down here, just again quite simple, but it is a language. It does take a lot of effort to learn. So I'm not saying by any means you should all go out tomorrow and start to learn how to use C# coding, because it takes a lot of time and investment. But it's another tool to consider. And this one, some of these lines here, are basically bits of code that says when Revit starts up, you can make it do something. When it shuts down, you make it do something. When someone creates a project, you can make it do something. Or again, you can build all kinds of toolbars and ribbons. So I can show you a brief example of that. So I've just built a couple of quick tools in here. So these are under the add-ins tab. I haven't put pretty pictures on them. If I go to external tools. So this one here I'm going to show you first. It's called command.xml. And this is going to be a real simple tool. All it's going to do is interrogate the data within the model. So similar as we looked at in Dynamo, but rather than running one script, go back, run another script, it will run them all together. And to show you something's actually going to happen, if I go to Rob's temporary folder, where he's not saved too much. Yeah, I'm going for, I'll show him all your family pictures later as well. So this file here, there's nothing in there, but what I can do is just go to Excel Tools, run this audit button, and that's it done. So again, this is far quicker than Dynamo in terms of actually running. This will run in, I know, 100th of a second to audit a whole model. And if I go to temp, that's not come. This is what happens when you get here late and don't test things. Okay, that should run. It's not going to, so I'm going to go Blue Peter style and show you what I did earlier. What should happen when you hit that button is it will produce this XML file. So it might be a little bit difficult to read if I zoom in. And all this does is it's scanning the model and chucking out the data for what's in there. So this code is going to go down. So if you look at just this top section here, if I minimize these down, these are all the different audit dates. So every time I press that button, it's going to produce an audit and it's going to date stamp that audit. So I've got audit date here, which was on the 13th of the 10th, 13th stamp for different times each time I run it. And it's telling me just details about it. So what's the model name, what's the description, what revision is it on, what issue status, what's the file size. Again, something's quite difficult to get usually without going into it. What's the total number of model objects? Quite useful. And again, if you've got a big project, you should know roughly how many model objects you've got. Has it got a starting view? How many warnings are in the project? How many unnamed reference planes? It's kind of a pet bug of mine, as you'll see. And so it will record all that information. So all I do is hit that button. Any user can do it within Revit, nice and quick, fraction of a second, and they can produce all this information straight out the model. And it should go to the C drive or wherever else you choose it. So run another one later. It's got different number of warnings, different number of information. So I've dumped it out in XML. You could go into a JSON format. You could go straight to Excel. Any other format you want. It's just kind of taking that data out and placing it somewhere else. The reason I used XML, I don't know if anyone in here uses a tool called Microsoft Power BI. But once I've got that XML file out of Revit, this is one I quite like using from a dashboarding point of view. Should open up. I can dashboard all that information. Again, not the easiest to see there. I don't think I can zoom in on this. No. This takes that XML file, and rather than showing it as lines and lines of text, I can actually show this in little diagrams and charts, so kind of as you'd expect from Microsoft Excel, but a few more colours. So this one up here is the number of warnings by revision. So at revision 0, I had 40 warnings. Revision 1, it dropped down to 3 warnings. So I can start seeing these graphs. Number of unnamed reference planes. So between revision 0 and revision 1, something happened, so I can check this. And these dashboards are easy to create. They can publish online. You can publish them to a mobile device, iPad, etc. So you can start seeing what's going on with your project all the way through. Again, quite simple way of kind of getting information out of Revit into a different format. It's nice and quick and easy. And it's no real effort to the user just to go in and hit that button, again, if the button's actually working. So that's that. What was I going to do? Right, finally what I see, another way of doing things. So whilst that's related to actually pressing a button, another way you can think about this is relating to something someone does within Revit. So something everyone will do. At the end of the day, they're going to close down a Revit model. And you can actually tell Revit when they close it, do something, and you can choose to notify them or not. So I hope this one will work. If I close down Rob's Revit and don't save the model. There we go. So it pops up with a warning box. So I've written this tool into Rob's Revit. So every time he closes, it says hello to him and tells him how large the Revit file was. So again, this you can show something to a user. You can set it. I worked at a company and we wrote one of these, and it said if someone closes Revit between 4 and 5 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, it pops up with a message box saying please fill out your timesheet. Simple things you can kind of do to remind people. But you can also keep this hidden. You can say every time someone closes their Revit model, send me all the data from their Revit model and place it on the server so I can analyse all the models within the company. Again, lots of things you can kind of hack into on there. So that's into a bit of the geekiness of the coding. And I think that's me, because I'm running out of time, and that's about the last slide. So thank you all for listening. If you've got any comments or questions, probably later, now, whatever Rob decides, he's in charge. But thanks, hopefully it was useful.
No.